And so much of looking at my old self going, oh yeah, I have a growth mindset. Oh, but now I don't. And this belief I have to be a certain way and there's only one way to be. And if you weren't that way, it was wrong versus like, oh, what a great opportunity to learn. Why would I expect to be good at something that I've never even learned how to do? Because I'm good at things, and good at things, identity never gets it wrong. I have good values. I'm a hard worker, never doesn't work hard. So just appreciating the balance of like how, even environment, like work is good, not work is bad. So that means if I take some time off, I'm now a lesser human. Where a growth mindset, it goes, well, no, these are different tools. So I'm still to this day on a quest to really understand my own thoughts.
Welcome to the Calgary Sessions. This is episode number 133. I'm your host, Jeff Humphreys. Before we get into it, I'm trying to get more exposure on this, so if you like the show, please share it. Today's guest, this has been like a long time coming, but we didn't know it was coming. So anyways, please name and who you are.
Tyler Chisholm. I'm excited to be here. Thank you. Like you said, yeah, it's a roundabout way and Calgary conspires. I am the CEO of ClearMotive Marketing and also a local podcaster, a host of two podcasts, Collisions YYC and They Just Get It.
It's funny, right? Like you've been doing longer than me. We're playing in the same arenas at different, but in different ways.
But in different, yeah, absolutely.
It's just really interesting, and that's why, I've had a handful of people like come up to me like, "Do you know Tyler?" I'm like, "No, I don't know. I know of him."
I have the same experience.
And he's like, "Is he doing the same thing?" I'm like, "No, he's not." So, anyways, this is when we hung out, whatever it was, a month and a half ago, whatever. Just like for the first time, it was cool to actually finally meet you and just like, oh, okay.
Thanks, man.
We're like
the same.
This is like we're doing different things. We're just playing these like in a similar arena.
100%.
So
and you and I talked, man. It's abundance.
Yeah.
I had someone like, oh yeah, are you guys competitors? I'm like, first of all, no. That's not how it works in
We
my
don't even
mind.
know each other.
No, we're not competitors.
Yeah.
There's so many cool stories to tell. There's so many awesome people in Calgary. I love how you deliver. I love how you engage. I love your production quality. So yeah, I was a fan before I even met you.
Yeah, man.
But yeah, I had people like, oh, do you guys know each other? Is that weird? I'm like, no, it's not weird. Anyway, I got a kick out of that, how other people reacted to it.
Totally.
And then finally we met, and anyways, as predicted, we got along just smashingly well.
Totally. And that's why this one's going to be fun, because I don't know shit about you. And when we met the first time, whenever I meet somebody before I have them on the show, I'm pretty cautious of what I ask.
Yeah. You don't want to feel like...
Because I want to feel this for the first time, right?
Yeah.
So when we met for the first time, I might have to apologize because I didn't ask a lot of questions about your background, because I want to do it live. I want to do it live with cameras and lights.
I love it. Okay, perfect. You want to save it, make it feel fresh, make it feel real for the audience.
That's it.
I even find sometimes in the preamble, people are like, oh, like we just talked about. I'm like, the audience wasn't listening then. It's okay. Yeah. Let it be the first time, but I appreciate that.
Yep. So yeah, man, I'd love for you to take this back. So like walk it back to as far as you want to go, how you grew up, where you grew up, how your parents did or didn't inspire you, friends, family, interests, and we'll just kind of drag you all the way to where you are today. And
wow, this could be a long journey, man. It could be a long journey. I love it.
Chris put in all the big cards, so we're good to go.
Okay, sweet. Well,
so walk it back.
Walk it back. Grew up in Quebec, grew up in Southern Quebec, grew up on a farm, which I couldn't move away from fast enough. And for anyone who knows me well knows I just bought a farm, which is really funny. My dad finds it endlessly amusing. Fabulous place to grow up. I grew up around tractors. I grew up around, my dad didn't go to work. My dad worked across the yard. I worked, and so I got to grow up with my dad. I got to grow up with my dad and his brothers, and grew up around like all the hired men and like kind of that environment. Like I think there's photos of me at 2 or 3 years old in a diaper with my uncle, who now makes context was 20, in the truck, driving the truck, working on the farm, me standing on the seat beside him. So growing up in that environment, which again, as you get older, you get sometimes an appreciation. Like those are really unique, kind of flavorful, but for any farm kid, they're like, well, no, that's just what it is. But my city friends, their dad went away to work and came home, and they saw their dads in the evening. They saw their dads on the weekends. I worked with my dad. Like that's still to this day, we do projects together. So I grew up kind of in that environment, and I grew up in Southern Quebec. So I grew up in an environment with English, French mixed. And again, until I moved away, I didn't really appreciate the value of these two different cultures. They were very different, as I talk with my hands, I can't help it. I put handcuffs on, I can't speak. Growing up in these environments where it'd be nothing to have a conversation like this, where it was half in English, half in French, and you'd express yourself in a certain way. And it's a very big, boisterous kind of, when I moved to Alberta, I had to notch it down a little bit because it felt like it was closing more doors than it opened. But yeah, that was my background. Mom and dad, I have a real positive childhood. Any of the things that happened that were shitty were just 100% me being a shithead, to be super blunt.
Yeah.
My parents were great. They were hardworking. They had their stuff. And I realized they had me when I was young, which is funny. As I get older now, I look back and I have friends that are having kids in their late 30s. I'm like, my parents were in their early 20s.
Wow.
I'd have no means. I would have had no business having children at that age, but that was just what you did. And some people still do. And it works out. Ish. So great relationship with my parents. My parents split up about 10 years ago. That was actually probably the weirdest thing in my childhood, but I was 40. You know, and I had someone say, you know, the thing about having your parents split up later in life is that you think it's not going to bother you. Because I'm 40, or I'm 38 or 37 at the time, roughly speaking. And so they split up and now they couldn't be happier. And they ended up swapping partners with.
No way, one of those stories.
Yeah, it's super bizarre and not great. Like they're not friends now. It did not work out. But now my parents are each with the person they should be with at this phase of their life. They're both super happy, have a great relationship with them. But growing up on the farm, I learned a lot from my parents about, you know, hard work, resourcefulness. I learned that you maybe need a bit more balance. So I grew up where work was the only thing that defined you, and like your measure was how hard you could work physically, how late you could stay up, how long you could go without eating. It was a little bit of a macho culture, but never wrapped that way.
Did you pick these kind of lessons up just by watching? Or did your parents ever sit you down and explain what work ethic really is? Or was it just kind of...
No, it was just expected.
Yeah.
It was expected. Like, it was so funny. My business partner was describing his 16-year-old son just got back from camp. And oh my God, it was so hard. And we did this and we worked late and we stayed up. And I was like, that was every day growing up on the farm. And he didn't question it like, oh, today's going to be a hard day. It's like, no, today we're going to, you know, I have some hay crop at my farm. But my neighbor just brown bales it. And I'm just smelling the smell of the fresh cut hay. I'm like, oh man, I spent many a summer standing on a wagon behind a baler, like at 12, 13, physically working. So I should never pick a fight with a farm kid. Never.
It's so funny you say that. We're growing up playing hockey. Whenever we went to the small towns, it was
crushed.
It was known. Don't fuck with the farm kids.
100%, man. Totally.
Like,
you grow up like just that's what you do all the time, and it is a measure of like because you're on the wagon with your uncle who's X amount of years older than you, and if you can't get the bale up to the top of the thing, you're gonna get digged on a little bit. And you know, I think that was a great place to grow up. It was also a great place to go, hey, a lot of that was awesome, and a lot of it was a bit toxic, and it wasn't as supportive and as caring, and like being a little bit more gentler and kind with yourself. And even my parents got divorced. You know, I watched my dad. A lot of guys of that era put in the work. I did the work. That was the agreement that I signed to do. Like, you know, maybe I didn't spend time on those other things, but I provided and I did the work. And I saw that maybe work out well in some areas and not work out well in others. So some of the lessons I've learned are also like, hey, maybe there's a different way to approach that, and that's okay. Because they did the best with what they had available at the time. And part of my journey is also really to understand, like, okay, if I respond a certain way to something, where's that coming from? Is it a trigger? Is it just someone just pushing this big red button that I don't even know is there? And a lot of that has come from growing up in an area that in an environment that was very much like there was one way. There wasn't two ways. There wasn't gray. There was black and white. And this is what good and values and honorable. And it was always usually based on your ability to do work.
Do you think there's do you think it's a bad thing?
Which part?
the part of like growing up in like this black and white environment, and whether that means like lessons or work ethic, you know, like there's a lot of there's these things that you didn't do. Today things can be a little different, right? Maybe, and gray's probably, I like gray, but I don't think that's the answer. I feel like it's swung the other way. Now it's like very emotional or empathetic, like it's very kind of white gloves, you know, like
it's a tricky balance. It's a really good question.
Because I grew up the same way.
Yeah. So
you're
seeing that you're resonating with the story.
I grew up with rules, you know, lots of, you know the line, and you never cross it.
You know what happens if you do cross it.
That's it. And there's this like driving work ethic beside it. So as you're saying, and for me, that's what allows me to do what I'm doing right now. I have that background. I know what real work is. I'm like, is it right or wrong? Or it probably isn't right or wrong. It's just a circumstance.
Fair enough. And I think right or wrong, black or white, perspective.
Yeah.
Because you're speaking at it, you know it.
Yeah.
It's like the story, like two fish are hanging out. One fish says the other fish and says, man, the water's cold today. The other fish looks over and goes, water? Just the ability to go, hey, is this a good or a bad? Like that perspective, which in the world I grew up in, you didn't even think about it. It was just, it was. being able to say, hey, and I love behavioral flexibility, like that hard work and that grind and that push, like I wouldn't be where I am and who I am if it wasn't for that.
Yep.
I think I probably would have had a few more casualties in my life, whether that's relationships or maybe potential addictions, who knows, without going, oh, this is amazing. But you need to balance that, maybe yin and yang if you want to play that kind of angle to it. So I think just having perspective and being able to know, yeah, this is really serving me. But anything, like speed is good until you go a little too fast and then it's dangerous. So I think that perspective, all those things are now bad and we need to go the other direction, that will run its course and also have equally maybe unbeneficial outcomes for some. But just the fact we're even talking about it means we're able to see it. And I think there's a lot of value to that. Well, that's the value.
and I think I agree with you. And before getting into these conversations, I didn't give it a lot of thought. Like it didn't occupy a lot of brain power. But now that I get to have these conversations and get to listen to other people and how they grew up and what kind of, now I can actually, I hear your story. I'm like, oh, fuck, I was the same thing. So then all of a sudden you feel, okay, I understand it. Doesn't mean it's normal, but I understand it. And I can see the value in it now. It's perspective.
And appreciate it and get away from guilt, shame, shouldn't have, or, that was wrong. Or and I have some friends that are people I know that tend to like, this happened to me. So therefore these people, I'm like, well, okay, it happened. Yes. It could be shitty. And there's gauges of trauma has small T's and big T's. I want to be respectful of that. But going, okay, what can I take from it? And I'm no longer that person. And I'm recently, have you read the book Mindset?
Dude, I don't read.
Oh, you don't read? Okay.
I'm like, okay, I'm so like ridiculous. Do
you listen to audiobooks? That's another way to do it. Okay. All right. I'm listening to this book right now called Mindset by Carol Dweck. And it's essentially the balance between a fixed and a growth mindset. And so much I'm looking at my old self going, oh yeah, I have a growth mindset. Oh, but now I don't. And this belief I have to be a certain way and there's only one way to be. And if you weren't that way, it was wrong versus like, oh, what a great opportunity to learn. Why would I expect to be good at something that I've never even learned how to do? Because I'm good at things, and good at things, identity never gets it wrong. I have good values. I'm a hard worker, never doesn't work hard. So just appreciating the balance of like how from youth, and the book talks a lot about like leadership, but also talks about like overpraising children and like, even environment, like work is good, not work is bad. So that means if I take some time off, I'm now a lesser human. Where a growth mindset, it goes, well, no, these are different tools. So I'm still to this day on a quest to really understand my own thoughts.
Do you spend a lot of time with books? Like, are you looking for knowledge, or do you just kind of passively just like enter into your world? And you're like, oh, I'm going to check that out.
I'm questing less than I used to.
Yeah.
It's a really good question. It was, I'd say probably pretty heavily addicted to the journey of understanding me and being better version of me since I was probably about 25 to probably about mid 40s. And it was all self-help books, didn't read any fiction, didn't read for pleasure. It was like, I need to learn this, I understand this, I need to learn about this thing. And I was obsessed with it and loved it. Always at the quest of kind of, I want to use the word performance, but use it loosely. Like, how do I make myself better? And like, or sometimes I'm like, shit, this behavior is closing more doors than it's opening. I need to like stop reacting that way, stop the need to be right, stop the need to like be more right than someone else. And like a lot of it was power dynamic stuff. Until about mid 40s, and my wife inspired me because she is an aggressive reader. Like I think one year she read 60 books, and I was like, how does that even happen? Like, who does that?
I agree.
So I chose to use the growth mindset and find it inspiring. And so I think I hit 28 last year, which was like a record for me. So some people will go, oh, that's a lot. It doesn't matter. But I would have to say I read 6 of them. All the rest were audiobooks, and probably 2/3 of them were fiction. Just reading for the value of a good story well told. And that's been in the last probably 5 years. But this book, I'd heard about it multiple times. Multiple people referenced it to me. And it's one of those concepts, you go, oh, growth versus fixed mindset. Like you can get the concept very easily. So like, I don't need to read the book. How this woman researches for 20 years and I'm going to get it in 1 minute. Come on. Like that's a little bit arrogant, ignorant maybe on my part. And just getting into this book and like, again, to your point, it showed up a little bit. I went, oh yeah, I'm going to read this book. And then just now taking me down the journey and catching myself with my team. And maybe normally I would say it this way. I'm like, oh, what would I say if I brought a growth mindset to this? So I would say it is always part of the program.
Interesting. Back to your youth. What else are you interested in back, like besides the working and farming? Is it like sports and school? Like how does it all kind of fit together?
I was a sports kid for sure. Played all the sports because in a small town, you worked, you played sports because if you wanted to be somebody who's somebody in the high school dynamic, did fairly well in school without trying very hard to the bane of most of my teachers' existence. I spent most of my elementary school at the office getting in shit for everything.
Just like talking too much or just like acting out or just
yeah.
like,
Yeah, keep going.
I'm,
I don't know. Keep going. I feel you're familiar with this list.
I've got this picture of this wild French environment. And,
Yeah, a little bit. And I can't. This came up the other day or something. I'm like, where's this permanent record I was always threatened with? We're gonna put this in your permanent file. I would love to give it a read.
That would be
it's
awesome.
probably accurate. It's so funny. I recently, maybe 5-6 years ago, my dad, the woman that he ended up with, she used to be the secretary at the school, at the elementary school where I went. Not when I was there, but after the fact. And it's so funny. We were there and visiting and whatever, and she's like, "Oh, she held the keys. Like, let's go into the school." And it's weird going through elementary school. It's just weird. I had this weird thing happen. So I have a quirky little OCD habit that if my brain is really kind of bored, I'll start counting things and I'll look for patterns. Oh, I'll count the amount of record labels over there. I'll count this and count that. Never to get the answer, just to occupy my brain.
Yep.
And I walked into the school, and there was literally a desk outside the principal's office that I spent most of my time at. And on the wall were all the old graduating photos from the school when it was like in the 50s when it used to be a high school.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, I immediately started counting them.
No way.
Because that's how I occupied my mind when I had to spend all those recesses as a shithead kid doing shithead things outside the principal's office. It was a weird little flashback, like, and all of a sudden my wife's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, I realize now why I count things. Because I'd sit here mindlessly counting because I was so bored because I couldn't go outside of recess because I'd get into some kind of trouble. I haven't told anyone that story. So there, I'll give you the real story, man. It's so ridiculous. I'm like, but the things you pick up when you're younger that get imprinted on the computer, in the program.
Yeah.
It got to high school. High school didn't get into nearly as much trouble in high school, and did well in school, played sports, kind of worked my way through. And very early on, I think my mom has it. I was in maybe grade 5. Like, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Yep.
Which you should always ask someone in grade 5.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote a letter. I want to be a pilot. So when I turned 16, I got my private pilot's license.
No way.
Basically got my driver's license and my private pilot's license in like the same week or kind of same 2-week period of time. So that was always the journey. I'm going to be a pilot. Be a pilot.
Did you see something? Like what?
Well, growing up on it, it was Airwolf.
Oh,
the TV show Airwolf.
Amazing.
That's what it was at. You put the trailer on right now, I'll get giddy and excited. For sure. And anyone who's from the era will know what Airwolf is.
Oh, I love it.
I think that was part of it, but also growing up on a farm. And I grew up we didn't have cows and we had like a dog and a cat, but I grew up on an equipment farm.
Okay.
So an equipment farm, every job was kind of gauged, like the bigger the piece of equipment, the more senior it was. So you start with the tractor, then you work your way up to the bigger tractor, then you work your way up to the truck, then eventually you're driving the combine. And like I would like stay home from school when I was 14 to combine with my dad because we did commercial, go out and do all the combining in the area. Back then when like 2 farmers would have a combine and then we would do everyone else's work.
Yep.
So I grew up doing that as a kid all the time with my dad. So the plane was just the next coolest machine. Like, because I love operating equipment, like I love that kind of stuff. I've always been an operator and I've kind of found myself there. And so airplane was just the next coolest thing. And then Airwolf for sure, man.
Airwolf.
Yeah. So I started flying when I was 16. I used to skip school, go rent a plane and then buzz my school.
Like little Cessnas?
Yeah. Little Cessna. Yeah. 152. Yeah. 100%. I literally buzzed the football field. In hindsight, I don't know how I didn't die. I was such an idiot, man. Such an idiot, but whatever.
So what is that? Is that like 14 get your learners and then go up in the air with a co-pilot
kind of,
or something?
Yeah. I think at the time, I can't remember, but I think it was 16, you could fly solo.
Wow.
It really came down to like you pass your license and like would the school rent you a plane? But you've done all your flying with them, so they know you and you've been checked out by their instructors, and they'll rent you a plane.
Buzzing the football field.
Literally, like what
Fucking
an idiot.
tipping your ring.
What an idiot! Like in hindsight. And so that was kind of from 16 to 26. I flew all the time. Like I would rent planes. I would like one time we like showed up at dusk. All the docs were in the plane with 5 of my buddies. We got a twin engine. We flew to Ottawa, and then we flew in circles around the fireworks on Canada Day to watch from above. And we were stacked up. There was a plane at every 500 feet. Like, because everyone like we thought we were the only ones with a super cool idea. Yeah. Apparently other people had thought of this, shocker. And we fly in circles. And then it was so funny. That was one of the first moments I had of like, oh shit, like we started flying around in circles. And I'm like, okay, good. You're clear to head back. And all of a sudden I was disoriented because I've been flying around in circles looking at the ground. So I spent the flight, it's about a 45-minute flight, not even 40 minutes, flying back going, shit, I think I know where the airfield is, but I'm not 100% sure. And it's night. It's 11 o'clock at night now. It's dark. And like my friends are all laughing, having a great time. And I am like sweating bullets. And I'm pretty sure, but not sure. But you have a huge landmark with Montreal, like right there. So I know I'm not going to overshoot, but I'm like, I got to find this little landing strip. And you can click your push to talk 5 times, and the landing lights will kick on. And so that's how you've landed, do a night landing. And so I'm flying, and I contact Montreal Tower and say, oh, just checking, just a position report. And they position, and I was like, wow, this is exactly where I should be. But I honestly didn't know if I was actually there or not. It was the first time I was like, oh shit, this is real. Like, not only do you kill yourself, and we are far away from that, but
it's running through your head.
Yeah, 100, I got a plane full of guys, and I don't know where the fuck I am.
Crazy.
So I got down on the ground and went and got hammered after, and I was like, now I know why pilots drink. I understand now.
Just keep it all together.
I was like, maybe, I was 18, maybe 18, 19.
So
top of the world. I had the world by the tail. What an idiot. What an idiot. What a knucklehead, man. What a knucklehead.
And so from like 18 to 26, are you a like professional pilot, or what do you do?
No, I went, because in Quebec you have the CJEP program.
Okay.
So you do high school, and then you do high school to grade 11. Then you have 2 years of CJEP, which is kind of a preparatory for university.
Okay.
So I didn't go to university. I did 2 years of CJEP, and I took a science degree because I was like, okay, I'm going to have a basic science degree and my commercial pilot's license. So I won't be the pilot who's just got the pilot's license. So the whole time I was basically doing my multi-commercial IFR, I was also going to college at the time. So I have a basic science degree, and then I got at 26, got my multi-commercial IFR. And said there's not a lot of jobs in Quebec. I'd done some small charter work, but probably it's like the 450, 440 hour pilot range. So you're nobody in the pilot world. You're nobody. But you think like I've been through, like I've gone the echelons, but everyone else is looking down from the top, and you are nobody. Moved to Alberta. There's lots of flying jobs here. There's lots of opportunities. I talked to a bunch of places. Oh yeah, no, come out here, come and see us. Got here. Wasn't really finding anything.
What year was that?
2000.
Okay.
2000, yeah. Right after Y2K. Everyone remembers that. The world was going to explode. It didn't. February, I landed here on February 14th, 2000. I drove across the country in the middle of winter, which in hindsight, I don't know why I picked that. We had like 1 day of snow the whole way. It was dry roads. But I had an abscessing tooth. So all I remember is driving the car with my girlfriend at the time, with a trunk full of stuff, just eating Advil and Tylenol the whole way across the country.
Did you have a job? Were you coming to a job?
No, I was coming to I was coming to a maybe. I was coming to an opportunity. And my girlfriend at the time, her parents had left Quebec and found their way to the oil patch a few years earlier. And they're like, it's amazing. You should come to Alberta. There's so much opportunity. So we did have a little bit of a place to land.
Yep.
So that was in February. Her and I broke up in June, and I decided to stay. I was like, there's something about this place. Like at that point, I had like heard no. I think one day I heard it 80 times. Because you get this book that has all of the name of all the different airlines from one plane to Air Canada and who the chief pilot is with their phone number. So I just like literally spent the day, and it wasn't really going anywhere. And then like not long after 9/11 happened, and it'd be like getting your pilot's license right before COVID happened. And to be honest, it just wasn't going there. Like if I look back at it, and I loved flying. But what I realized in hindsight, and this is like a recent epiphany, telling people you're going to be a pilot is probably the most rewarding thing you can do when you're 15.
Yeah.
That's amazing. You're amazing. Talk about fixed mindset. That's the greatest thing. You have your path. Look at Tyler. He's all set. I look back on it, and yes, I love flying and doing the thing.
Yeah.
When it got to the career, it just wasn't working, wasn't going anywhere. Didn't really sure if I wanted it bad enough. Because if I wanted it bad enough, I probably would have found a way, and I didn't. And I look back now and go, how much was it just because I got so programmed into the belief that I was going to be a pilot? Because that's what I got praised for. But that's a recent epiphany. It hit me in the last year. I'm like, I wonder how much that was the thing. So still would not trade it for the world. The regimentation, the process, the learning, you still had to pass the exams. Whether you wanted to tell people it was cool or not, you still had to go pass the Transport Canada exam. And so I love that experience of it. And I learned a lot from it, but I don't know if I was actually ever going to be a pilot. And it's weird to say. That's, again, first time I've said that out loud.
It's interesting to think about it though, right? Because in the moment, in that was a long period of time, a decade, whatever it was, like, you don't want to say it was like intertwined, like, your identity in this.
It 100% was, man. It 100% was. No question.
And then all of a sudden you get to a reflective point. You're like, nah, I was like tricking myself.
100%. Yeah. And it took me, there was a few years, I had an identity crisis for sure. I'd see planes and I'd be like, oh man. But then like life started to sort itself out. Got a really cool. I was working in the fitness industry at the time.
The school thing was done. You got a degree.
Yeah, I got my degree. I got my science degree from it's a CJEP in Quebec. It's CJEP. Okay. That's what it's called. College. I can't even remember what the acronym stands for now. French acronym. But so I had that and had my multi-commercial IFR, which unless you're going to go into aviation, it still didn't hurt. Yeah. Still telling people. Still was like, oh wow, okay, you've accomplished something. The idea of the kind of maybe you're not going to work in your degree, but you got it. It shows you can stick it out. So it played a little bit of that factor.
Did you have an idea where it could take you, that degree?
No idea.
There's just like
no clue.
Time to do it.
No, I just did it. Because I didn't want to be the pilot who didn't have school. Because there's a lot of pilots that I'd heard. I'd talked to like more senior guys that were flying for larger airlines and like, what's the path? And they're like, yeah, somebody who's got something else to balance them out is usually looked at a little bit more fondly. Again, you gather all this information when you're younger and your parents are trying to support you and learn about an industry you know nothing about, right?
Fitness.
Yeah.
So pilot, this, fitness. Where's the
fitness? I got a job. I moved to Alberta. I put myself through flight school working behind a bar. So and you and I have talked about that. It's a fantastic way to one, learn how to deal with people, one, make fairly good money for time, and you can balance it into other things in your life. So I moved here. I got a job at the Hard Rock Cafe in Eau Claire. Amazing. When it was on its downslide.
Oh, okay.
yeah, not at the peak when it was the place to be. So I always heard about the legend of the place.
It was so good.
Yeah. So what I've heard. And I got a job. Gold's Gym opened that facility down in Canyon Meadows.
Oh, yeah.
So I got a job there as a trainer. And it's so funny. This was a like TSN turning point moment.
But okay.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go
ahead. What I'm wondering is, and I'm sure other people are like, this is the first time you've talked about fitness. You were a trainer?
I was, yeah. So when I was in Montreal, I worked at a bar. I worked on the farm with my dad, and in between that, I got into the gym scene because I was like, because I was taking the science part came really easily to me. I was always super chunky as a kid, so I was always like, okay, I had like the York like plastic the ones filled with cement or sand or whatever they were in my bedroom with the plastic like locks you put on the end. So always working out, trying to do that. So that was always kind of an underpinning. Yep. Maybe a little bit of narcissism, maybe a little bit of like I got to be bigger. I don't know. It was all those. All those things, man. I grew up in that era of not that we don't live in it now, of the kind of like all the role models where it's super jacked up guy, the Rambos and the Schwarzeneggers and all that. That's that's a whole nother podcast. The alpha toxic masculinity brand that's been out there. Back to your point about black or white. So found my way into fitness, and the science side, the exercise physiology side was all fairly like it made a lot of sense to me. A bit of the science background, but I loved diving in and reading about that stuff. Yep. And I remember I had a friend of mine who was taking exercise physiology, and she would always come into the bar and sit at the bar and read her textbook. And I'd always be like, I'm so interested. And I remember the one day I was like, I'm going to become a trainer. She's like, really? Just like randomly? I'm like, yes, I'm going to become a personal trainer. I was maybe 21. So got a job at a gym, just started doing it and and got into the scene. So I always kind of had that in my back pocket. And that was more like, it's the most selfish job because everything you get to learn, you get to try on yourself. Right. And then you get to share that with other people. So it's really a fun job. Yeah. And I actually fell in love more than I realized in seeing people transform like that. Like I had a lot of clients back then, middle-aged, older ladies specifically, and they'd lose like 40, 50 pounds. You don't lose 50 pounds, you gain a whole new personality. Yeah. And you develop a relationship with these individuals. And it was very rewarding. Like I had a blast doing it. I quickly saw the glass ceiling of being a trainer and where that went from a lifestyle versus finances and all that. But it was super rewarding and kind of fell into it and went, oh, wow. And so I get a job at this gym. And long story short, the ownership group is a little bit sketchy. And so they brought in this guy. So when you buy a Gold's Gym franchise, you get this laundry list of here's all the sub-franchise or all the sub-franchises you can buy, like the Pro Shop and the Juice Bar and the personal training. And then, so there are all these sub-brands that fall under recommended vendors by Gold's Gym International. Yep. So these guys checked this one fitness program called IntraFit. And do you remember American Gladiators? Yep. So the guy that came in to teach this was Thunder from the American Gladiators. No way. This guy was 6'4", 200 pounds, or 300 pounds. He's a monster of a guy. Billy Smith was his name. So I'm in the room with maybe 15 trainers and this guy, Billy, and we go for our first day. So it's 2 days of intensive training. So we go in and this guy's like amazing. Like it's science. And it's like, you look at this guy, huge, just juiced out dude. But yet he was brilliant. And like how the body works and mechanics and levers and how to train a muscle. And it just like blew my mind. I was like, this is the guy I've been looking for. Like I need to learn from this guy. And right at the end of the day, he finished up the class and the gym and the owner came in and said, hey, can everyone hold back? And he basically all but said, I didn't realize how much this was going to cost. I'm not paying for each one of you. You, and you're fired. Literally, super classy dude. And I was one of the guys who got fired. And I'm just sitting there and I'm just like, this is like one, everyone was like, what the fuck just, like it was, dude, it was so like bad movie kind of thing. And I remember leaving there, I'm walking out and I'm like, you know what? Fuck this. Like, I think it was like $400 or something like that. And I knocked on the owner's door and I said, hey, Danny was his name. I said, hey, I appreciate you got to do what you got to do. But I said, I love this so much. I'll pay for my own course. Can I come back tomorrow if I pay my own? Because he didn't say it was about the money, but everyone was like, that's what it was. And he's like, looking back at it now, being a boss, I would be like, well, who's this? Like, who's this guy who's stepping up? But it was just selfish 26-year-old, 27-year-old me going like, I want to learn this stuff. I got $400. Screw it. Like, take my money. I never paid. He never asked for it. I followed up. I said, can I pay you? He goes, yeah, don't worry about it. We'll sort it out later. And I ended up come back the second day. And Billy shows up and he's like, what happened? Like, where is everybody? So he kind of grumble. And then him and I just connected. And, he was the teacher I was looking for, but apparently I was the student he was also looking for. And we hit it off and I learned so much from this guy. But because he had a whole nutrition program, I looked like I was a super trainer. Because as you know, as soon as you fix your nutrition, your results are like magnified. So, but in the gym, everyone just sees that like you're working out with people and they're getting results in a rapid period of time. Like, oh, it must be the best trainer in the world. It's because I was also doing nutrition with these individuals. So really fell in love with it. And like myself, again, back to the selfish personal trainer, doing all the things, learning, understanding. So it was a really, really cool time in my life. And I ended up actually moving down to LA for about a year and running the nutrition center at Gold's Gym in Venice Beach.
Is that like...
Yeah,
That's the one?
That was the one, man. It is a gong. To call it a gym, I don't know what it really was. It was a weird, just like anomaly, like a rips in the universe that was all these weird people would show up to do their thing. I saw a guy ride a unicycle around the gym. You see like strippers, porn stars working out in like string bikinis. Then you'd see like Kobe Bryant walk by and Lou Ferrigno would come in. It was such a, but there it was just their life. Like it's just crazy LA. And so, I was there for about 10 months, 11 months.
How did you get there?
Because Billy was based out of California.
And did he, so you guys...
I moved down, so I stayed in touch with him.
Tight-ish.
Yeah, completely. So I lived with him out in Northridge for a while. I lived with him out in the Valley for a while, yeah.
Oh, you guys were...
Yeah. So it was an experience.
Were you like on a path to do something with this? Like
potentially, yeah. There was like he was growing this business.
Yeah.
He wanted to so I got flown around. So if you owned a gym in Mexico per se, I spent 2 weeks in Mexico for one stint, and you bought a Gold's Gym, and then you go, I want to do Intrafit.
Yeah.
Then he started sending me to do all of like the thing he did here in Calgary. He'd send me to do it there. So I'd go down. I remember teaching in Guadalajara with like 2 translators and like a room of like 40 personal trainers, like all these Mexican dudes and ladies, but mainly dudes. And like translate, it was a nutty experience. It was fun. Yeah. I did that over the US for probably a couple of years.
Wow.
That was a crazy experience. It was fun. He wasn't the most like mentally stable individual, I found out quickly. He passed away recently a couple of years ago, which is super sad. But yeah, he wrestled with some demons that when you start living and working with someone, you're like, whoa, okay, what's going on here? Like, okay, is that 30 espressos you've had today? What's going on here? So there were some unhealthy reasons of maybe why that business wasn't going to go anywhere. I learned a ton, and I will always be really appreciative for what he taught me. Back to my earlier comments about, there's some good things I want to do, but there's some things I'm not going to do as a business owner. And then eventually, through that period of time, I'd met my wife, and so I eventually moved back to Calgary and decided to open a weight loss and personal training center here.
It's a big chunk of your life.
It was huge, man. Huge.
And lots of
huge,
kind of off the board experiences, right?
A little bit, yes.
Not,
totally.
Not very standard.
No, and it's funny how it all makes sense in reverse, right?
Yeah.
Well, it makes sense in reverse. I'm a good storyteller. Make anything make sense in reverse. But when I was working with these gym owners, teaching all of them how to do personal training and nutrition, what I quickly realized is most of them didn't know how to run a personal training business or sell. Neither did I, but I was just good at it. And I could sell, and I learned how to deal with people working behind the bar. And all of a sudden we'd start training and teaching their membership salespeople to upsell personal training. That's where I really started to open up myself to the world of like, I really love business. I really like branding. I really like positioning of like how we're going to take this gym, which is a box, and put these different services in it that are like personal training. 0203 was really on the rise. It wasn't a big thing like it is today, where everyone has a personal trainer and group training and see people train in the park. It was more like, wealthy people or movie stars, and it started to become very mainstream. So working with all these gym owners who were business owners who bought this franchise and went, oh shit, I need to make money. What do I do now? So in hindsight, I see where that path started to merge together.
But it felt natural back then?
It did.
Just to look at it with that kind of, with those lenses on, just like, okay, if I do this, or this is important. If these people are already here, we can do these things.
It kind of also just happened. Like I fell forward. to be blunt. Like
Yep.
if I could sit here and go, oh yeah, I had a big master plan and I had big like 11 by 17 all drawn out of where I'm going to go. That's not, dude, it did not look like that.
Yeah.
It was all about like being successful. I want to grow something. There was always a push towards like more and growth and like, let's build something and let's make some money and let's do this and let's kind of build that life. There was always an underpinning and back to that motivation and that work ethic. You know, that was my dad would joke, 40-hour work weeks, I'll do that by Wednesday.
Yeah.
Like, it's just the way it was. Like, it wasn't even a thing. So, like, being able to multiple jobs. And even when I was in LA, I was doing catering on the side because I met somebody who was a chef and she needed someone to support there. So I do that on the weekends to make extra cash. And it just was what you did, right?
Yeah. The business you opened up here, the fitness and nutrition, what was it?
It was an active weight loss and nutrition center.
Where was it?
It was down in Avenida.
Okay.
Way back. 03, 04.
Okay.
04, 05.
So kind of early, was it?
04 to 09.
Was the idea early? Like were you ahead of things back then? Or was it? Or
It was an interesting time because really what made up the market, there wasn't a lot of personal training studios. Like there was hardly any. There was maybe one downtown. Wasn't these movement centers you see now. There was literally a massive weight loss industry and a fitness industry. The weight loss industry dwarfed the fitness industry. What they really did well was reoccurring membership, reoccurring revenue model. What they didn't necessarily always do well was get people results. Because again, gyms only work because not everybody goes. We sold 10,000 memberships. I'm like, yeah, but only a couple hundred show up at any one time. I think it's if you draw an 8-minute, if you put a dot on a map and you draw an 8 to 12-minute radius, only 8 to 12% of that population will come to your gym. The higher the education level in that demographic, it'll get up maybe to 20%, but that's about the maximum. And that's a few years back, those statistics of like, where would I put my facility and kind of doing that math, like that kind of a thing. So I would say it was early, and that's where it was, the first branding book was the 22 Immutable Laws of Branding by Al Rice. I read that book, and if you can't be number one in a category, redefine the category. I was like, I love this idea because I'm not going to be number one in weight loss. I'm not going to be number one in like gym. What if I created active weight loss where there was a huge fitness component tied to eating, and it was more about body composition and empowerment and like feeling good and like, you know, it's not about the scale weight, it's about dress size. It's not about it's about your waistline. It's not about this, and really kind of repositioning it. And that's where I really got to take the first idea of like, well, what if I built a brand around this, which is how I met my current business partner because he was a graphic designer at the time. And we met at some random backyard fire pit party. And he offered me, I said, never refuse a cigar from a stranger because it might change your life. Literally changed my life. Hey, I'm Chad, Tyler. He goes, hey, you want to smoke a cigar? I'm like, sure, man. Like, what do you do? I'm a graphic designer. I'm like, oh, I'm starting a business. I need logos. So I'll do your logo for you. And we still work together to this day. And that was in 03.
Crazy.
So that's how I built that brand, was around that whole concept, and really got to take it into like, okay, build the brand, then position yourself as higher value, and so you can charge more, and like that whole environment, and the kind of the premium, you can charge whatever you want as long as you service accordingly. So taking a bit of that model and really got to fall in love with it, and I really fell in love with the marketing side of it, the ability to create, perpetuate, and communicate value through community and perception of value and value proposition. And yeah, that was when I made it real.
Did you that like pivot to like open your own thing? Did you know you had that in you? Was it like lurking after you got all these, like, you're training people, you're bouncing around, you're seeing all these things? Did that idea creep in your head of like, I think
it was always there because I grew up in an environment where everyone kind of was an entrepreneur because they were farmers.
Yeah.
You had your own farm. No one gave you a paycheck. Like if someone went off to work, that was more like, that was an anomaly. And my dad had snow removal business in the winter. I had a trucking business in the summer. He had the farm. The trucking business would rent the trucks to the snow removal business so that they could plow snow. And so I grew up around that. And it wasn't like, oh, you should be an entrepreneur. Like no one, like being an entrepreneur was a weird thing when I was a kid. No one talked about that. You kind of got a job, or you just did. I don't even know what they called it. Like I knew guys that owned their own trucks, and no one called it entrepreneurship at that time. It was actually, that was kind of the remedial program. And you can't make it in the real world. I guess you have to be an entrepreneur. I love how it's become maybe almost too trendy in the other way, where it's actually, it's way harder than everybody thinks it is.
Now you don't want to use the word.
I know, 100%. But I think it was always in there because growing up around it, of doing your own thing, was just what everybody did. And no one made there was no fuss about it. It's just like getting a job was actually more that was more weird. Not that it was, but.
And like pulling it all together. I don't know how you found the money, or did it all feel natural at the time? Like as this idea kind of slowly developed, when you're looking for a spot to lease and you know what the build out's going to be and all the machines you need and all the leases, did everything just make sense to you, or are you just kind of just moving forward?
Makes sense is a strong term. I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah.
Like ignorance was bliss a little bit.
Mm.
Like I think back at it, I would think way longer and way harder now about it
Yeah.
than I did then. I kind of was just in do it mode. And I borrowed 50 grand from BDC. The rest was just self-financing. I was renting space in another gym. So we had some clients.
Mm.
So when we opened first, like month one, we had people coming in. So that was like,
Yeah.
you know, build your audience, build your
Yeah.
community before you need it. So that actually paid off.
Mhm.
Was that a strategic plan?
No,
No,
you
it's
just
just
did it.
the next step.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just
yeah,
did it.
yeah.
No, 100%.
Mhm.
And there was some, I don't even remember feeling stressed about it because it was just, I think, because I didn't even really know what it meant to sign a lease. Like
Yeah.
ignorance was absolutely bliss. Like it's a good, I've never really thought about it that way. And compared to what I know now
Mhm.
about business, oh man, I was like, it should have failed 10 times over.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I didn't know any different. So I just did what I just pushed forward
Yeah.
because that was the next step at 27, 28.
And you had a bunch of experience too. That kind of you had this foundation.
For sure. It
So-
all piled up.
Yeah.
But it wasn't nearly as conscious as we're talking about it right now.
Um,
It's fun to think about it that way.
well, yeah, because it's some people think there's like these perfect plans, you know, and then they don't make a
Yeah.
move, right? They're waiting for all these things to align, and they might be reaching for something that's out of their skill set or out of their experiences,
Yeah.
and then the likelihood of it succeeding kind of goes down because they have nothing to draw from. They're going after something way out there that they've never done before. So
Yeah, such a balance.
Mhm.
Like if you knew what you know now, would you do what you did then?
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm glad I did, or else that's exactly why I know what I know now.
That's it.
I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that.
So that you know, it ran for 5 years.
It did.
And what do you think,
And
like-
it ended badly.
It did
It did. Oh yeah.
Like-
yes, it did.
to the ground.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, yeah, I did an episode. I spoke at Fuck Up Nights a couple of years ago
Oh, yeah.
about this topic, and it was quite cathartic, actually. So sold the business. Exit, perfect. 6 months left in the lease. Like, let's exit this business. It's great. Found a buyer. They bought it, and then within a month, oh, this wasn't what we thought. Reps and warranties. This wasn't what we thought. We thought it was this. I'm like, what do you mean? That was super clear. I thought I was super clear. Could I have been more clear? Of course I could have been more clear. There's no point in blaming anybody
Yep.
except myself. If I look back on it and the way we managed our receivables, like there was a bunch of things now that I would have been like, oh yeah, okay, I see where that got there. So we went to mediation. And now there's 1 month. So this drags out. Cause I'm like, what are you talking about? It's a good business. It's making revenue. It's fine. They had some gripes around, well, but these memberships expire. I said, yes, which I explained. Well, we thought we were buying guaranteed revenue. I said, well, you just need to renew them because they've already been. So there was a lot of that kind of
Yeah.
stuff going on, which again, I can articulate so much better now.
Mhm.
So we went to mediation. And I still remember the morning we show up. So I have my lawyer and we're going to go into mediation because that was part of what was in the agreement. And I walk in and I talk to my lawyer and she's like, I just talked to the mediator. Like, you're the bad guy here, just so you know. I'm like, spent 2 days in a room with the buyers and me, the mediator at the end of the table, my lawyer, their lawyers, just going. It was it's kind of like a veil because I'm like, what the fuck? It was terrible.
Mhm.
I ended up having to take the business back at the end. They had sucked a bunch and then I find out that they had sold a bunch of personal training sessions in that time, took the money out. So, but now my lawyer's like, well, no, you have to countersue them, but that'll take 2 years. And I'm like, so we wrapped it up. We put a out of business sign on the door. A bunch of people that should never have lost money did lose money.
Yep.
I lost tons of money out
Yep.
of it because then I had to deal with like this, that, the legal bills, all the things. It was a super shitty situation. And that was my big fuck up. That was, I had a buddy used to say, he goes, I'll never hire someone from my senior leadership team unless they've had a major failure. Because if they haven't had one, that means they're probably going to have it with me. And I think everyone needs one.
It's coming.
That was my whatever. I don't even know what metaphor to use. And while that was imploding, my current business partner and I decided to open an agency.
No
We
way.
were at Earlston Palace on 4th Street. And we walked out into the street after a couple of drinks and we look up and there was a space for a lease. He goes, we should start an agency and put it in that space. That would be cool. And I'm like, are you serious? I'm like, because I'd been working with them and I'd really realized that I saw the glass ceiling of the gym. And this was kind of when the sale was going on.
Yeah.
So it was starting. I'm like, dude, I'm about to exit. And, and I was kind of coaching him in business a little bit. We were kind of business buddies. We weren't really, I always joke, we were never drinking buddies. We're always business buddies. So that was probably why we're still like brothers and business partners to this day.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, no, I think I am serious. And so kind of put to bed for a couple of weeks and we went over for dinner at his place. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. And then so we bought a little office condo on the Manhattan Lofts, right on 11th between the two McLeod Trails. And
Right.
this is all this is about to take off.
What year is this?
07, 08.
Okay.
And so that was dying. This was growing. They were kind of there's probably more overlap than I'm realizing, but it feels like that this was the TSN turning point moment. And I still remember like, okay, I like got the judgment against me. I got to close this business. I got to spend it, you know, I think it was 150 grand at the time, which at the time was
real money.
Was a real number.
Dude,
it was a real number, man.
Still real money.
Still a shitty. Yeah, I don't want to spend it now, but at the time it was like
all of it.
Yeah, it was not good. Yeah. And like I had to put some money to take an extra mortgage on the house. Like it was the moment. It was the crash.
It's that story, right? It's the story.
Yes, it is.
That the one that, you know, not everyone experiences, but you hear.
I certainly did.
You hear the story.
Yeah, that was
right?
my story. It sucked. Yeah, there's like I thought I had the world by the tail. Thought I had it all figured out. And I did not.
And you don't see it coming.
I did not see that coming at all, man.
Like
I was right up until the second I was fucked.
Yeah. Yeah, like this is a good. I'm doing a good thing.
I'm doing a good fight.
This is like
I'm right.
Yeah.
I'm like.
Yeah.
Apparently I was not
wrong.
I was not right. I might even be the opposite of right. And I still remember though this moment. I don't even know when it was because it was probably a series of moments. But I'm like, this is shit. But I have this amazing opportunity right here with this awesome guy to build this business that I'm super excited about that already has no glass ceiling. It does, but it doesn't. Not compared to this. I'm like, I can get all super wallowy and shitty and like, you know, have a poopy party, you know, pity party, whatever. Which I probably did for a small period. I still remember sitting at home with my wife on like, we took all the files and we kind of took everything out of the gym from a privacy perspective, like did what we could in amongst of this bad thing, literally put a close sign on the door on like a Friday night and went home and just like sat in my basement and been like, what just happened? Like, what is going on here, man? Like, it sucks the energy out of the room right now.
How long did that last? Do you remember?
That night.
That was it.
That night.
You gave yourself
I gave myself that night
to wallow and then.
Yeah, pretty much. The next day I was like, okay, like it's going to still be shitty. The phone's going to ring and people are going to like, it's going to be shitty for a while, but I got to move forward because I have this amazing opportunity over here. And like, whatever my part is in this, I can't screw this up too. Like this is dumb. And there's some of that resilience and some of that like, okay, the bale of hay is heavy, but pick it up anyways and get it on the top of it to the top of the wagon kind of thing. And that was kind of 08. Yeah, that was end of 07, beginning of 08. And then that kind of spun for a while. I was involved with the agency. And then 09, my business partner, Chad, and I'll give him to this day, said, and I was like, I came in at 20% ownership. Because he had started the business. He'd been working for a couple of years on his own. He's like, okay, we'll do 20%. I forget the dollar amount. Then we did 40. And there was a dollar amount because we just kind of restructured things and we found some of the original. It's funny. I'm like, wow, that was a good deal. He's like, that was a damn good deal at the time. And then I still remember, to his credit, he called me one day and he's like, we were talking about roles. And he's like, okay, I'm going to be creative director and you're going to be the CEO and we're going to do the thing and we're going to grow it. And that was in 09. And he said, you know what? He looked at me, he goes, I never want it to feel out of balance. So I'm going to give you 10%. We're going to be 50-50 and we're going to split everything and we're never going to talk about it again. And he gave me 10%. We became 50-50 and we pay each other the same. We bonus each other the same. Like we've never discussed it since. And we're both always like, man, I'm so glad you're like, likewise. And we're brothers. So there's moments and give and take and he's been through some stuff and I've been through some stuff. But that day set the trajectory and set the framework. And I want to give him huge credit if he listens to this or anyone else who knows Chad. He's very fair. And he's like, I just want it to be fair. And I don't want this to ever be a thing. I don't want it to ever be a distraction from what we're trying to do. So it's done. Oh. And it set the tone.
That's rare, right?
Yeah. And we celebrated our 15-year anniversry as an agency last August.
Crazy.
Yeah. And a combination of things, but that moment when he did that, man, that was pretty solid, man. Yeah. Super solid.
The, to not wallow, like to take the night to do it and then have this opportunity lurking there. Like that little moment right there could have changed a lot of things, you know, like,
yeah, it could have been.
It's, so my last job I got fired from.
Okay.
And, so I'm like 42,
okay.
41, 42, getting fired. Fuck. Not ideal.
Yeah, no, that
don't see it coming. But I remember the same thing. I came home and like that I was like quiet overnight. And I'm generally a quiet person, but I was like more quiet. And I went for a bike ride the next morning at 6, like I do. And like halfway through my ride, I was like, fuck this. Nice. Like, and that was it. And that was my thing. So
and I love you can remember the moment.
That's it. Like, and it's just, you need some time. Yes. But I feel like the longer it takes you to snap back, the harder it is to like
100%
figure it out.
And again, back to what we talked about earlier, like we have a world that seems to almost over-index on catering and, it shouldn't be hard. And, and again, coming from a mentally healthy state, because again, a lot of people deal with different things, there is still that get over it.
Yeah.
And give yourself permission, and it's okay. And there might be some residual, and that's still being human. But, what's your word about forward momentum?
Forward ambulation.
Forward ambulation.
Fucking Laval Saint Germain.
I love it.
That's not me.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. But you said it to me, so now I will always credit you with it.
Yeah.
That forward ambulation, which I did look up, and it is a term used in physiotherapy for someone who's learning to move forward. Dude, that word holds up, man. It's a great word, and and I love that you did it on your bike too.
Yeah.
Which I know is a big, that's a Zen moment. That's part of your meditation.
That's for sure.
On top of water skiing and all the other cool shit.
Yeah, just staying moving.
Moving forward, man. Because I don't believe there's any such thing as standing still. Because if I stand still, the world's still moving. So that means by default, I'm probably going backwards.
To be on this run for 15 years with the agency.
Yeah.
And this is where our lives start intersecting, right?
Yeah, totally.
I grew up in this creative environment, working in these creative departments. Worked at an agency, hired agencies.
Yep. You're familiar with this beast that is agency.
Started my own little version of an unagency. So this is really interesting for me to hear, to be on a run for 15 years in this environment. I don't know. And I don't know how the fuck you've done it. It's
fair enough, man. There's been some moments. Most of them are good, but there's definitely been some we had a really solid win early on that put a foundation under our business that will be forever. In 2011, we got opportunity to pitch agency of record for Honda Canada. So that's to manage all the motorcycle, marine, ATV, and power equipment business for the Canadian division.
Did you know what those of record meant back then?
I did a little bit because I did not know that. I didn't really know. To your point about I want to have this.
It sounds like
I want this. This is the thing I should have.
Yes.
And we'd been a client of theirs for a period of time. They'd been a client of ours for a period of time. We did small jobs and probably since 2008, a little bit of ad hoc work with a bunch of other agencies. And there was always an agency of record for auto. And that was auto is the whole other level in the Honda world. And we were probably one of 7 agencies that were all doing kind of ad hoc bits and bobs work for Honda, motorcycle and ATV power equipment. It's amazing because it's you have a product for every season. When you start getting ready for snowblower season, get ready for lawnmower season, get ready for hunting season, get ready for motorcycle season. It's such a great brand to work with.
Every year.
Because they have some of the same thing. Yeah.
Same cycle.
100%. Always with new products because they are an engineering company first. So always new, better, did this, performance, torque this, stroke of this, the suspension is this. And turning that into marketing speak is a part of one of our core competencies because project engineers want to tell you all of the things. Yeah. The customer just wants to know about the thing. So it's going to do 6 jumps. Okay, I want that. I want 6 jumps. Yeah, it's going to go faster. It's going to cut my grass better. It's going to start. And we won that we were one of 4 agencies that were invited to pitch. We were 9 people at the time. The other 3 agencies, I don't think there was anybody smaller than 110, 120. 3 Toronto agencies. We were the only non-Toronto agency. We got invited for that pitch. They flew out, presented to us, and they said, and we'd been working with them, saying, we know you're capable from a creative perspective. Here's our objectives. We want to get ourselves. They were always missing deadlines. It was more of an operations perspective. Yep. The creative, they were good agencies. Everyone was doing good creative. But they just didn't have their shit together. Yeah. And they wanted to, and they knew it. And it was an identified problem. It's all about deadlines and going live with campaigns, especially with them. It's all date. Mm-hmm. And I don't think they'd hit a date for a motorcycle campaign launch in years. And so we pitched it and we won it. And they, originally was supposed to be X amount of dollars of work. And then it doubled in the first, we had no idea what we're getting into from that perspective. And we kind of held on with our fingernails. And we've retained that business to this day.
Amazing.
So we are still and we've expanded the business. So we've taken over all their social accounts for motorcycle marine. We're doing work for Auto now. So we're doing work for Acura. We're doing work for Honda Auto brand in their customer experience side of things. So it's been is it risky having, so much over the years rely on one client? Yes. And what are you going to do? Say no? No. You're going to continue to grow your business, but you're going to continue to overserve and deliver and be awesome and really get to know that business as well as they do and be that trusted partner. And luckily, they're the type of company that it's the up and in kind of HR model where they will give you feedback and you fix it. They'll never bring it up again because they believe that your institutional knowledge of their business and their brand and the passion for their products, which we're a bunch of gearhead guys. It's not just guys. I shouldn't say it that way. My business partner and I are gearhead guys. They love that because we live and breathe that product. And the nice thing about Honda, like whether you like the brand or don't, no one's going to question. Like it's a great brand. Like it is rock solid.
Yeah.
Like you buy a Honda, it will run forever or have a great resale value because someone will buy it. So it's been a magical experience that I think without that, would we have made the 15 years? I don't know.
Yeah.
You'll never know.
Yeah.
But that put a foundation under our business that taught us a ton. Also solidified cash flow. You're planning out 12 months in advance. You're not starving project to project. It was a game show. Like we had no idea, like at the time, the impact it would have. It was a win. It was awesome. But I didn't, dude, no idea. Crystal ball was not good.
Which is interesting, right? And people see you where you are right now. You know, from the outside, they might have an idea of like what it looked like, the rise to get there, whatever.
For sure.
But it's what I find fascinating about this environment is like 6 minutes ago, you know, you're talking about the story, right?
Yeah, 100%.
The story of it all not working. And then, you know, fast forward 6 minutes and it's this.
It's a fun way to look at it.
But it's this opportunity, right? You can't see it coming. It is the opportunity that kind of sets the foundation for.
Yeah, those are both the story.
Yeah.
Like exactly. And not that far apart. And it was at like,
yeah,
I could wallow here and stay stuck in this, or I could go here because there was opportunity. Like nothing gets me more excited about what if, what could be, but you have to have the energy to chase that.
Yeah. I want to get into this little podcast of yours.
Sure, man. Yeah. The whole other thing. I didn't even touch it. I wasn't even thinking about that.
Yeah. So, I'm fascinated just as someone in the world.
Cool.
You know, like, and people are now DMing me like, hey, I'm thinking about starting my show. Wonder if I can talk to you. And then usually when I talk, and so I'm taking these random phone calls.
Yep. Nice.
Just to like
giving back a little bit too.
And just to like get a sense of what's happening. I'm sitting on another idea that I won't talk about now, but.
Okay. We'll talk about that.
But the two questions are usually, well, how do you make money? And how do you get people to listen? So I find it very fascinating that they want.
Have you figured out question one yet?
No,
I'm on the edge of my seat for question one. If you have any interesting insights you want to share.
I love question one because I say, no, this costs me a lot of money every year to pull this thing off.
Yeah.
And then,
answer.
And the second part of like, do I want more listeners? Yes. I start the whole show by, if you'd like to share it. So sure, I want it, but it's not a driver.
Yep.
So I'd love to hear why you started your show and kind of, we'll just kind of like, and where it is right now and what it actually is.
So I shoulded myself. Man, you should really put something out there. You should contribute. You should create content. I don't like writing. That's not my thing. I'm not going to do it. So I made a mistake of saying to a buddy of mine, I said, I think I should start a podcast. He's like, oh, cool. Next day he shows up at my house with all the gear.
What year is this?
Here you go.
What year?
2018.
2018. Yeah.
And probably end of 2017. And there was a guy working for me at the time who was different demographic than me. Like, oh, we should do a podcast with two of us. Kind of the old guy, the young guy, kind of play that angle a little bit. So that's what kind of got it going. And then my buddy Graham shows up, gives me all this gear. Here's the mic, and here's the Xbox, here's the box, and all the things. M-Box, that was what at the time. Yeah, all the stuff. He's like, here you go. And like, well, that's kind of like all this audio stuff is kind of cool. I'm like, I like gear, so I'm like, that's fun. And I said, you know what? Okay, and then it kind of fell through. The young guy's like, oh, maybe I'll do my own thing. I was like, that's fine. I should just do my own anyway. So I said, okay. I talked to my business partner. He's like, yeah, sure. Like as an agency, like we'll put some time behind this. And what I didn't want to do at the time, I was annoyed. So the first podcast was called They Just Get It. Because I was annoyed at people that would almost demean someone else's success without knowing the story.
Yeah.
Like, oh, and this started with my buddy Billy, who owns Village Ice Cream. It's a good friend of mine. And someone's like, oh, Billy's so lucky to have that business. I was like, do you have any idea what he went through to start that business? Like peddling ice cream in the middle of February downtown. And I was like, come on, it's kind of shitty to like, it's kind of bullshit to demean someone.
Yep.
Like just probably because it makes you feel better. Oh, their dad was rich, or they got lucky. I'm like, do you even know their story? So I picked 3 people that I knew that were very successful. Chad Hughes, who owns Land Solutions. I picked Carlene Donnelly, who ran Cups for 29 years, just retired, and Billy. And I said, I'm going to talk to these 3 individuals and learn their stories a little bit. Like that's why I love your format, because I'm like, and I took a little bit of the Joseph Campbell hero's journey, like introduce who you are, what dragon did you slay, like what did you actually overcome, and now let's talk about where where we got to. And that was always kind of my format of like, I'll build it. It's like, I don't have any preset questions. I like this 3-act play. Like, let's build it, let's set it up, let's overcome it, and let's resolve it. Basically, every movie and every story worth telling uses that format. And I remember sitting down, I did one. And again, I picked 3 people that were really safe. I knew these people, I knew them well. But I found out really quickly I didn't know them at all. I spent this hour with them. I was like, holy shit. Like, actually didn't know your story. Like, I liked you and knew you and I had respect for you, but I'm like, I didn't really know what you went through. I didn't really know your background. And I kind of fell in love with it. And so I did first 3 and they just get it. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, I'll have this person on and that person on. And then I got to, and then someone's like, hey, you should get interviewed on your own show. So I got my buddy Scott to come and interview me on my own show. And that was fun. And then my buddy Kevin, I met Kevin. This is when the plot thickens. And then I met Kevin Crow, SVP strategy over at Longview, just an awesome human being, the epitome of a growth mindset, this guy. So I meet Kevin because my buddy Chad Hughes goes, Kevin wants to start a podcast. Can he talk to you? Same exact scenario. So he goes, I said, sure, yeah, I'll meet Kevin. Sounds great. I'll meet him. I love meeting people. Let's do it. So we go have a coffee. And he's like, yeah, I want to start a podcast, but I think you should be the host. And I was like, whoa, like, what's going on here? So we have this amazing conversation, and I say, okay, like, that's cool, but I think you should come on the show because he like does crazy adventure races. He runs his own charity. He just ran the Moab 240 at the time. Kind of had this whole like 4-legged stool. Like, you have to have something that fills your heart and something that makes money and that you love. And he had this whole life philosophy that I was like, dude, like, come on, let's talk about that. We get on the show, have a great on They Just Get It, and then he gets up to leave. And he goes, okay, that was amazing. And we shake hands. And he goes, okay, we're going to start a podcast, right? And you're going to be the host. And he wouldn't let go of my hand. Does the long, he's got me. And he's like, come on, man, like, let's do it. And, maybe it lasted 30 seconds, felt like 20 minutes. And I had a moment of imposter syndrome but vulnerability. I said, hey, man, who am I to interview CEOs of Fortune 500 companies? Who am I to interview, venture capitalists, like clean tech founders? He's like, Tyler, looks me right in the eye. And he goes, when I stand up at that race line for the Moab 240 and I look around, I'm like, there's professional runners here. There's sponsored athletes here. Who the fuck, what am I doing here? He goes, but I run the race anyways. And I was like, fuck you, let's do it. And he got me. I was like, okay, Kevin, we're going to do it. And then he just started feeding me guests. And that's how Collisions YYC started. Because his theory was that in 2019, the end of 2019, Calgary was starting to come out of the funk, which was probably 13, 14 to 2018 anyways. COVID hadn't happened yet. It was still on the horizon. We didn't know that yet. And he goes, there's so many people solving really cool problems across the street from each other. Nobody's talking. The media is just focusing on the negative. The media is just like, oh, Calgary's terrible, and the gutting of downtown, and the oil industry is dead. It's never coming back, and all this garbage. And he goes, I think someone needs, and he goes, I'm talking to all these people because of his role. He goes, I'll feed you guests. And then we came up with the title, and we kind of co-conspirated. And I was like, because I was already doing They Just Get It. It was a pretty easy transition. And I recorded in my office, and we had a nice wooden table like this, and people would come in, and we'd do the thing. And I very quickly realized, like, I would do this if nobody listens because I love it. And because we didn't make it about the business, and then Collisions YYC was all about, to engage and inform on a diverse and inclusive Western Canadian, started as a Calgary economy, quickly became a Western Canadian economy. So I'll talk to the founder of a major oil and gas company one day, and a startup founder who just got her first $50,000 check the next day and just had her first baby. Because I'm like, this is Alberta. This is Western Canada. And that altruistic side, which altruistic always sounds like you were a bit contrived with it, but I was like, what do we do as an agency? We elevate and tell other people's stories. And I quickly realized, to get my imposter syndrome under control, this isn't about me. Who gives a shit about me? And I don't actually have to be the expert. I just have to be really good at asking questions and setting this person up to tell their story. And that's how Collisions got going. We maybe had 8 or 10 episodes. And then this little thing called COVID happened. And not only was I available, like I was recording 6 to 8 episodes a week. Because everyone wanted to talk.
Crazy.
Like, I'd meet you online, and then it'd be like, do you want to do a podcast? Yeah. How about later today? Like, it was got out of hand, like right away. It was amazing. And we did 100 episodes in the first 10 months.
Crazy.
Just boom, just blew out. And we started getting listeners because we went community. And, I'd have you on. None of your friends know who the hell I am, but they know who you are. And they're like, oh, well, if he had this guy on, maybe who else has he got in here? And then we started building out. And once we hit about 50 episodes, at least 50% of our monthly downloads came from old episodes. And it moved up to probably 55 to 65, 70%. And then I started people telling me like, oh shit, like before I go meet a potential client, like a sales call, I'll go see if you've had them on. I have people have been like, oh, wow. Like people come in for job interviews and they've listened to our CEO's podcast and they have detailed questions about our company. He goes, we hire them. So I started to hear about all these fun ways it was getting used.
Yeah.
And there was the concentric circle effect. So from a business perspective, the people, there's always like your brand, then there's like your team, then your vendors, then your clients, then the people that know you and don't use you, and then the elusive ring that we all chase, which is they don't know me, I don't know them, but I need all of them. And we trip over all these people in between where we have relationships. That's what happened with the podcast. People that knew me started to be, I had my buddy Barry, this is the best, I still love it. He calls me up, he goes, hey Tyler, I gotta tell you something. I go, what's up, Barry? He goes, you're smarter than I thought. I was like, I go, what the fuck, what does that mean, man? He's like, I listened to a couple of your podcasts. He's like, damn it. He goes, that's good.
You're pretty good.
And then he started sending me referrals right after. And that's how it started. Like very much the concentric. And then it was like, you'd have a guest on, they'd be like, oh, like I went and checked you out. You also have a marketing company. So I kept it very church and state for a reason.
Yep.
I think it was part of like, I don't know if you've gone through this, but there was a little bit of vulnerability of like, you're kind of putting out your version, your work of art out into the world. And I started very quickly to just show up and just be curious and be me. And I really started to like the version of me that came up on the show. I talked less. I asked more questions. I was less in my way about I have to look or be a certain way. I need to show up for them. Yeah. So I really fell in love with it. So like, you know, where did I get paid? We got some business out of it and it's continued to be beneficial for the business. Yep. Has it equaled out maybe, you know, in marketing, one good client can wipe out 6 months of investment in content marketing because it's a content marketing play. Yep. But the network I've built, meeting you, like I can look at my world in Calgary in the last couple of years. Without the podcast, I don't know where I'd be, man. Like I honestly don't know. I'd be in a lesser place than I'm in now. For sure. Like not on a different path. It'd be a lesser path. Yep. Like there's no question about it.
It's I find it now that like you're like deep into it. I'm at a good spot. Like I'm way into this too.
Once you're above 10, you're deep into it in the world of people that bail. Fair. So dude, you're crushing it, man. You're crushing it.
For me, when I think about that same thing, like if I didn't have this show, where would I be? I'd be in a world of hurt.
Oh wow!
Like because
I love that.
It's the
I don't love it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's the thing that leads the conversations. You know what I mean? Like people, there's something interesting about having a show, and
there is.
You know, whether they know the person or there's some sort of connecting point to it, because you can now sit in a boardroom, and you know, if you kind of just
it's
like
powerful,
you just kind of, hey, what have you been doing? And if you just shot the day before, you're like, oh, I just shot a podcast yesterday, and they're like, what?
Oh, tell me about that.
And then
instantly curious.
That's it. So I find it it's such a unlock in social situations.
100%. My wife, we go out now and she's like, do you have to know everyone? Really? And she laughs because it's when we go to a Stampede event. She's like, let's go. Like, yeah, I'll be 5 minutes. And she's like, how do you know these people? I'm like, podcast.
That's it.
I was in a restaurant and I walked in to meet with family. It took me 20 minutes to get across the restaurant because I ran to 3 people that I met from the show. Like, and not that was the goal, but it's fun. And, and you meet them in a very positive way. Yeah. And there's a sense of like, I'm not sure your journey, but you don't just have a chat. You have a 1 hour meaningful conversation. It's not just coffee shop banter. Yeah. Like you connect with people.
Dude, you've said it twice on this show. I've never told that story before.
100%.
So it's like,
Thank you for creating the environment for that. 100%.
It's like, it's those situations. Do you think there's, do you get asked from other people like, hey, I've been thinking about doing this podcast. What do you think? Like,
yes.
How do you answer it? And so before you answer this, I'm going to clip it.
Okay.
Me asking the question. Yeah. You're going to answer it and I'm going to post the video. Just so there's like, people need to hear this. People need to hear this so that they have some like, you know, if they're thinking about these ideas, here's the real way to look at
it. 100%. And I think like anything, like any journey you're going to go on, why? What are you hoping for?
Yeah.
Get rich? Check that off the list. Like, no, that's not what it's going to be.
Not going to work.
Is there a relevance to your business or something that you're doing? Is it a content marketing play? Are you excited to do it? Because the effort and the energy required is I'm going to guarantee 6 to 8 hours per episode is what we average per episode from prep, recording, editing, doing all the creative assets, promoting it on social media, you know, and that's on average and moves around a little bit, but that's what we've definitely streamlined. Like after 450, it's a bit of a machine. Yep. And I'm very fortunate. I have a whole team behind me.
Yeah. So
like I wouldn't like if I had to do all my own editing, I wouldn't have got past episode 2.
Yep.
I would have been sunk. So you think about that. So it's going to take more. More importantly, also, this is what I always recommend. If you're hell bent on doing something, try an audio series.
Yeah.
Don't commit to a podcast.
Yep.
Commit to, I'm going to do 3 episodes about something that's relevant to me or to some group that I think is going to be interested in it. Are you going to go talking head? Are you going to go interview style? Talking head is a lot harder to get out there because you're now just leveraging you. Immediately, like we built our whole audience based on you. Whoever was on the other side of the mic, we gave them all the assets. We made it really easy for them to promote. We made it easy for them to share. And Western Canada is a pretty small community, which I niched down, really, really super niche with being Calgary. You took a similar path. There was limitations, but the reward far outweighed. And you can get people from outside. You can play around with it. But the ability to identify, especially during COVID, like we got really good lifts right away because we haven't hit the right cadence or right time and because we were Collisions YYC. But thinking about all those things, if at the end of the day, you're like, no, I really want to give this a go. Like I'm passionate about it. I'm willing to put in the effort, the energy, and you're going to get filled up in some way from it, then I would highly recommend it. If it's a pure business decision and it might be the best thing for your business, if those other things aren't in place, you're going to fail at that, no matter how good it is for your business. If you're super passionate about it and it happens to be good for your business or what you're trying to do, that's great. But if you don't build it on that, it's way too much work. And it can fill you up or drain you depending on kind of where you're at. So I'd say that's the fireside chat you need to have with yourself. And then you can get into all the like, well, what's the economics and is it good for this? And you can do that till you're blue in the face. It's an amazingly energizing medium if you love it. If not, it will drain you probably worse than any other form of content creation, in my opinion.
And
hope that's clip worthy.
Definitely clip. It's also, you kind of got to experience it to figure out if you like it or if you have it too, right? Some people like, some people like overthink the idea and they're thinking about all the gear. You know, that's this first stumbling block. Like, what do I, like they're looking at all this
gear
stuff.
will make me better at everything, right?
For sure.
I have a better surfboard. I'm a better surfer. I'm a better fishing rod. I'm a better fisherman. Maybe.
And so I feel like it's just, you know, to your point of like an audio series, you know, maybe you set the thing, 3, 6, whatever it is, you record these things and feel like it, like, do you have this? Knowing that nobody's going to listen to the first 6.
So this is super low. So what if people listen to it and don't like it? I'm like, well, what if they listen to it? That'll be amazing.
Yeah.
But if you're going to write that out or create that piece of content for your business, or it's something you're excited about, put some guardrails around it. It's way safer for you. It's safer for the audience you're trying to create. And we used it when we launched a product around industrial marketing. And I said, wow, what's the best? So we did an audio series on industrial marketing. And the shortest one was 8 minutes. The longest one was 16. My business partner and I, we scripted it all out. So we're comfortable. And then we just had a dialogue about the different things about like where you should spend money and where you shouldn't. And we'd used it as a sales enablement and as a content magnet. And it worked great. Just because we chose audio around the belief that most people are going to probably be in their car. Like there's some great stats around kind of senior executives. They're usually in their car driving somewhere. So they'll listen to audio. So we played off that and it worked. But it was also easy because we'd already fooled around with it.
Yeah, you have this tool now.
Exactly.
You're like, it's very dialed.
Can I hit it with a podcast? Because I'm comfortable with this hammer.
and you know how what the hours are behind it, what team members you need to create it, and so
there's a path.
Yeah, it's this is my podcast thing has just been. It's very similar to yours, right? Like once you get over that 10. And I was just talking before you showed up with Emma, who used to edit the show a lot.
Okay.
She's working with podcasters in Europe right now.
Oh, amazing.
And she was working with this one creator and they did one season. Now they're going to shelf it. And I find it fascinating that people get to 10, 12, 15, whatever the number is. And they're like, yeah,
I'm good.
Which is fine.
Yep.
But I find it even more interesting when you sitting across from a dude like you at whatever the number is, 400 and whatever the thing is.
Yeah, between the two, I think it's 550.
550.
Yeah, between the two.
And
because I just did number 100 on, I recorded with Kevin because he was the reason behind so much of it. So I had him on. He just got back from stand-up paddleboarding the Yukon River. He's an animal, but that's another story.
Crazy.
Tune in, episode 100. They just get it. You'll love it. Guys, Out of Control is so good. Raising money for charity is great.
But it's
plug.
But you have the energy to be doing 500 plus. And for whatever reason, you see the value in it. I'm sure it's not the money.
It's not the money.
It's not the ego stroke by getting 10,000 downloads an episode.
No.
Like it's
definitely not the ego.
It's something else,
it fills me up.
Yeah.
And
but weirdly, right? Like
I know.
Unexpectedly.
It different, but the way personal training filled me up and totally surprised me as well.
That's interesting.
If I think back, because you're nurturing another person. You're there for them. It's not that's actually really interesting. I never kind of drew those two parallels, but so much of that job was so rewarding, and it's shocked me. I was like, well, I don't know why I love this. Like, I like fitness, probably for some of the wrong reasons when I was younger.
Yeah.
But if you're helping someone lose 50 pounds, you're not doing it for your ego. Like that's not what it is. Or if you are, you'll burn out on that really quickly.
Yeah.
Same as podcasting. Like the second I didn't have to be the hero.
Yeah.
One, it made it so much easier. Two, you could just kind of be in that moment with that other individual, and it's awesome. Man. Like if I took it out, and as I approached 500 of collisions, I'm like, what do I do? Do I keep this going? I don't know. Like it's as good a point as any to go, and up to this point, there's been no deviation. We're pushing forward.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to do something, but not having it in my life feels weird because it's become such a part. Even when I'm super busy, I'm like, oh shit, I don't know if I have time to do this. Because I record at least 2 a week. Then I have the conversation and I'm like, oh my God, that was so amazing. And I learned this. And like it never leaves me wishing I didn't do it. It's like going to a yoga class or going to the gym.
Yeah.
Oh, I wish I didn't work out today. No one says that.
Yeah.
But I can almost talk myself out something. Like I can talk myself into sometimes thinking I'm too busy to do it.
Yeah.
But yet I get so filled up from it. Every time, still, no problem. Like I'm doing one tomorrow. I'm excited about it.
Yeah. And then you know you got something, right? Like, there's a reason you're doing this, and it kind of.
And you get a little bit of positive feedback, which doesn't hurt. Someone's like, oh, hey, Barry, you're smarter than I thought. I'm like, it's a backhanded compliment, Barry, but I'm going to take it.
You say nothing ever, so thank you.
Yeah, completely. 100%. I'll take it. And, for the business, it's opened so many doors, and it's been such not only from just a learning and just like being a sponge and being curious. And it's really like probably the biggest outcome out of it, if I'm to say in terms of a value that's really been taken from a 1 out of 10 to a 10 out of 10 for me, is really seeing the value of curiosity. And I've been exploring that. I've probably maybe 13 or 14 articles in now about the value of curiosity from a leadership perspective. And that's 100% out of the podcast. And sure, we're all a little bit curious, but how do you be deliberate about it?
Yeah.
How do you create a culture that supports it? How do you remove barriers so people can feel safe, so then they can then be curious themselves without maybe worry about, imposter syndrome and curiosity don't go together because you're scared you're going to look bad. How about create an environment that people feel safe to ask whatever the heck, because that's what we need today, because our problems are not one-dimensional. They're like, every problem is complex and you need perspectives. And so that's been a cool journey of my own belief in that value or that skill or the practice of, I call it a practice because some days you nail it, some days you don't. That's directly from doing the podcast.
Yeah. So people don't, like when you're articulating, like, here's the way you should be thinking about when you start a show, like that, right? That piece of learning, it's hard to say that to somebody, like, this is what you're going to, because they might not learn that, right? They
100%.
might not get to that point, but once you're here and you learn these things, you're like,
well, there's many layers.
This is crystal clear.
It's
fun though.
I wonder how many episodes because I loved it always, and there was never I'm going to bail. And then I started the second one, which Kevin talked me into it, which I'm very thankful to him for. Again, speaking of like just how leadership shows up, he literally bullied me into it, and I could not be more grateful because he saw the potential where I didn't. If that's not leadership, I don't know what is.
So fascinating.
Very cool, man.
Thanks for doing this.
Thank you for having me on. It's an honor. It's a privilege.
It's cool, man. It's cool. It's cool for me to actually like hear the story now, because when you see, everyone, this might be an overstatement, but usually the first experience with somebody's online, right? You see them doing something. You see what they're talking about. You see,
you see what we all put out there in the world.
With the curated look and
100%.
Feel is message, right? So to actually sit down and see you, hear you, and listen to this has been really cool. Thanks for doing it.
Thanks for caring enough to want to have the conversation, man. I love it.
But like you said, those days when you're like, fuck, I don't know if I got it today. I
do.
Those are, there's a lot to do this. You gotta like summon the energy, and even
you have to show up. You have to show up.
Yeah. So the host has to show up, and then it's I appreciate when the guest shows up too, right?
It's the exchange of energy.
Yeah, for sure.
It's huge, man. I love it.
I end the show with one question. When I say Calgary, where's your head go?
Amazing. Hope, positivity, community, challenges, but awesome.
Yeah, it's all of it.
It is. We got big city with big city problems, but there's no place I'd rather be.
Yep.
And talking to people that are doing amazing things in the city gives me a set of rose-colored glasses that I refuse to take off.
I feel the same way. You can imagine, the conversations that I get to be a part of.
Totally.
Because you are a part of them too. And usually the energy in the room or on the call or whatever is like, I got something. I got something by the tail, and I'm
Yeah.
charging, or I see something. So it's pretty tough to not look at it through those glasses.
Yeah, I can't. You're not wrong to see the world in a positive way with a dose of reality.
Yeah,
but that's not what we're saying here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I choose. It's funny. The more I see positive, the more I find it weird. Weird.
Spectacular. Thanks again.
Thanks, brother.
We'll talk soon.
Look forward to it.